joining, and thank most people got here. I'm genuinely amazed by how many people have signed up for this, so I hope you find it very, very useful. It's designing for digital delivery, and I've put the quote on there: design isn't just how it looks, it's how it works. And that is from Steve Jobs, and which is one of my favorite quotes of all time, about training design. So if anyone's struggling, by the way, one of my very helpful VIP members said they can send the link to the people in the Facebook group if you are struggling. So if you want to pop up there, thank you so much, Andanella, you are a superstar. Because we have so many, I'm not able to make this very interactive. Just want to set your expectations on that. But on the plus side, that does mean that we are not going to run over. So every cloud has a silver lining and all that. So I'm aiming to take about 40 minutes today, just to chat you through some of the things that I have learned about designing for virtual delivery. There's an awful lot of stuff out there at the moment, which is all about helping us to facilitate online, but I think unless you've designed it with the online in mind, you're making your life pretty difficult, to be honest. So that's what this session is all about. So if I very quickly just run through the agenda, very, very quick info about me and my experience for those of you who don't know me. I promise I will keep that nice and short. Then a little bit about what it's about, you know, when we're actually designing for the virtual space. I'm then going to share with you some things I've learned not to do. As I've gone through my journey, which I'm still quite early on in. So I've learned quite a lot of things about what we shouldn't do when we are designing for digital delivery. And then you'll be pleased to know I'm also going to talk about some of the things that we should do. So 3 key lessons that I have learned, and then what do we do after that? I'm really conscious that in a short webinar, you know, we can only do so much, and we don't want to try and run before we can walk. And I am a firm believer in learning how to walk before we start taking on too much. So just a tiny little bit about me. I have 3 businesses, believe it or not. So they're all aspects of the same thing. One of them is Keystone Development and Training Limited. That was my first business, and that focuses on bespoke design for large organizations. So my clients include people like Costain, Kellogg's, Keolis, Amis, Metrolink, Warburton's, Johnson's Workwear, Towergate Insurance, and I will work with them to design bespoke, usually management development programs, sometimes induction programs, and sometimes standalone workshops. And although I do facilitate, and I have associates who help me to facilitate, that actually isn't the core part of my job, it's the design side that is. So I also have Power Hour training, which is bite-sized training, as the name suggests, and that is off-the-shelf, ready-to-use training material that you can just buy and run. So no tailoring, no bespoking there, just the key things, and that's been running since 2010. I also have the Training Designers Club, which is probably how you found me. And the Training Designers Club I started properly just under a year ago. And that is there to support other learning designers. I've been designing training now for 25 years. And, you know, I'm not perfect. Who is? We're always constantly learning, but I think I can offer a lot of support to people who are perhaps a little bit earlier in their learning design journey than I am. And that is what the Training Designers Club is all about. And the thing that these 3 businesses have in common is they are all design based. So I would like very much just to reiterate to you, I am not an online facilitation expert. I'm definitely not that. There are people out there who are, it's not me. I'm a designer, and I designed, say, proper sort of structured training courses. I've designed loosely facilitated workshops, management development programs, accredited programs, coaching based sessions. So this sort of online, this digital delivery is just another aspect of design as far as I'm concerned. So they're the 3 aspects of my business. So you probably do know me through the Training Designers Club, and this is what this is a part of. And Andanella has already made herself so helpful, so I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this. She gets so much value from being a part of the VIP group, and we value her as well. She shows up to everything, she shares her expertise, and she helps other people, and that's what the VIP membership is all about. So that's the hat that I'm wearing today, if you like. So a tiny bit of interaction for you right now. I would just like to know where you are in your training design for virtual delivery journey. You should be able to find the annotation tools. I can find them at the top of my screen usually. And I'm going to ask you, where are my annotation tools? Where have they gone? If you can there they are. If you can find, if you go to the pop-up menu in Zoom, you should be able to choose Annotate, which is a little pencil. And if you just choose a stamp, as some of you already have, that's brilliant. And just pop a stamp on those quadrants as to where you think you are at the moment. I don't know who put this heart here, but whoever you are, I'm right with you. That's probably where I would put mine as well. Oh my gosh, you're all super keen and you're all super confident. I feel like fraud now. This is really, really interesting, because I think if I had run this session even a month ago, I think those stamps would be going in really in quite different places. I think there was a lot of fear about running stuff online. It's even a month ago, certainly a couple of months ago, which perhaps isn't there anymore because we have been forced to embrace this technology. And we found it isn't quite as scary as it perhaps looks. So that's great. It's great to see everyone's so keen on learning this new skill. And some people are, someone's put no, not in the super confident bit. So that's quite interesting. Okay, so what we haven't got really is people who are reluctant, who are being dragged kicking and screaming into this space. And I know that for a lot of L&D professionals, it's not our preference to be delivering in this way. But I think what we have all seen, because we're curious people, aren't we? We're L&D people, we're dead curious. We've embraced it and we've decided to work out what we can do with it. So it's brilliant to see everyone is in that space. I am just going to save that, if I can bring my little thing back up. And right, where has that gone? There we are. It all keeps disappearing from me. So thank you for sharing that. And we will carry on with the webinar. So designing for digital delivery. I do have a few notes. As you can imagine, I am a designer after all. The first thing to reassure you is it's not all about the tech, which was a massive relief to me when I had that realization, because I'm not the world's most techiest person. We've still got a few people annotating, a few stars appearing. It is, in fact, all about the people. And that's, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by the chat now. I'm going to ignore the chat just at the moment. So yeah, so what we need to focus on is the people rather than the tech. And once we've got that straight in our head, I think the designing for digital delivery, certainly for me anyway, it became a lot easier. So I didn't really start doing this properly until a couple of months ago. Not properly, I had dabbled in it before. So as I said in my initial email to you all, I've designed 9 sessions in the last couple of months, and it is getting a lot easier as I'm starting to sort of see, you know, you can't see the wood for the trees when you begin, and I'm really starting to see that clear path through. So yeah, sorry, I'm just looking at the chat here, I'm getting distracted. It is being run as a meeting. So we do have those extra little facilitating tools and things in there. Feel free to use the chat, by the way. There are a couple of times I will ask you to actually use the chat, and I will look at what you're writing in the chat. but I'm not going to be looking at it too often because I will get distracted, as you can tell, as I have done already. So there will be times, but I can obviously come back and handle any questions in there towards the end. So let me just get rid of these other annotations which have appeared. There we go. Okay. So if I ask you some questions now, if it isn't about the tech, if it's all about the people, what makes a great face-to-face session? And you can just put your answers in chat. I'm just going to allow you a minute or so to do that, and I will actually look and see what's coming out of there. So interaction, energy in the room, engagement, energy, discussions. Yeah, rapport, great one. Interactive discussion, positive environment, body language, yeah, non-verbal expressions. You guys can type really fast. Connections, consideration for the learner's needs and preferences, so important. That two-way communication. Okay, these are really great things that you're coming out with, and that's very much to do with actually the delivery. But what about when we're designing for a great face-to-face session? What do you take into account when you're designing that session rather than delivering it? So let's just flip that question a little bit. Accessibility, great one. Less is more. Dale said that. That was brilliant. Duration, clear objectives, structure, timings, hearing from the participants, having a clear outcome, understanding the needs of the group, interaction, relevant activities, challenge versus support. These are all great, great things that you're coming up with. And it's music to my ears that you're all saying these things. Flow, not cramming it in, says Eva. So that's a great one too. Delegates knowing how to use Zoom. If we're doing virtually, yes, probably. Pre and post work, says Maria. Another great call there. So yeah, so I'm just going to sideline that chat now because you'll probably keep going on forever in that. So the great thing is that all those things that we take into account when we're designing a face-to-face session are exactly the same things that we need to take into account when we're designing a digital session or one for virtual delivery. So phew, it's not quite as hard as we might think, which is fantastic. So I'm going to run through just a few things that I have learned not to do, and I'm sure you will add your own thoughts in the chat as we go along. Some of the mistakes that I made really, and I've already corrected them. So the first thing I've learned is not to overcomplicate things. We had quite a discussion in the Training Designers Club just last week or the week before about innovation and challenge, and should we be doing that right now? And the result of that was, obviously, it's a great time to innovate because we know we're kind of being forced into it. But the challenge should be coming from the content and not the platform. And I think that's where I came from when I originally posted that, is that if people are struggling to use the tech, that's all they're going to focus on in the session, rather than thinking about all that great learning that you have thought about and put together and structured, and all those activities that you've considered. So mustn't overcomplicate things. Use the simplest tool that you can to get the learning objectives that you want to achieve. Second is to feel that you have to use every tool available to you. I mean, do you in face-to-face training? Do you use absolutely every single facilitation tool that you can in your face-to-face sessions? I bet you don't, because it's overkill, and people just get lost and they get confused, and they're mind blown, and it can feel a little bit too overwhelming as well. So it is a little bit linked to the first one. All these are kind of linked, but don't feel that you have to use every tool available to you, just the ones that will do the job. Because I think as trainers, and again, it's debates I often get into, is because we master something and we get used to it, whether it's face-to-face or digital, we get a bit bored with it. And so we think, oh, we'll put something new in and we'll put something else in. But you've got to remember all the time, it's for the delegates, it's not for you. So just because you think that's a little bit dull, if this is their very first virtual session, you've got to keep it simple. I mean, this is being run as a webinar, so it's not strictly a facilitated session. But the very simplest tools, such as chat and annotate the slide, may be enough if someone has never ever done this sort of session before. So don't use everything going. I can see there's lots and lots of chat going on about the different platforms out there, which I am not going to get into. But I know that things like Teams, Adobe Connect and WebEx have quite reasonable functionality. Particularly if you work for a large organization, they may be great tools for you to use. Zoom is just a very simple one that allows us to do most of the things that we want to do. So something else that we should not do is over-rely on tech. Don't use too many applications, particularly if you're flying solo. If anything goes wrong with this right now, I won't be able to handle it because I'm focused on delivering this session. So don't over-rely on the tech, and don't use too many applications. There's a lot of great stuff out there, a lot of standalone applications. But what I have found is that if you're constantly having to switch from one thing to another, log into extra things, people can get lost. And things don't always work as you expect them to. So try and keep it all in one platform rather than bringing in external applications if you can. Just because, for one, it makes it easier for you or the facilitator if it's not going to be you, and it makes it easier for your delegates as well to focus on the learning that you're trying to provide. So by all means, if you need to use an external application, go for it, but don't use it for the sake of it. Similar point to the one before, really. Don't focus on the hardware or the software, but do bear it in mind. I think we've kind of been covering this. You guys have been doing this ahead of me in the chat. And this is where I say it's a little bit linked to the not using every tool available to you, but being aware of what your platform can do. So when you are designing for digital delivery, if you know what platform is going to be used to deliver that training, then that is fantastic, because you can design with that in mind. You know the capabilities, rather than me, I have to design not knowing who's going to be delivering it and using what platform. So I kind of have to stick to the really core functions that most of them have. So don't use everything, but be aware of its advantages and its limitations, and design with those in mind as much as you can. Don't assume that what worked face-to-face will work virtually. And this is why, it's a very, very simple point, it's why I think we need to give some proper thought to the design of virtual training and not just the facilitation. I've seen so much in the last 6 weeks, people helping us to develop our online facilitation skills, which is fantastic. But I can't take the session plan for a face-to-face session and just use those exact same notes to deliver virtually. I'm going to trip myself up, and we're going to come undone, and we're going to lose that flow and that structure. So don't assume that what worked face-to-face will work virtually, but equally, don't assume that what worked face-to-face won't work virtually. I have been surprised when I've been converting my Power Hour sessions. In some of the sessions, I've barely had to change anything to make it work virtually. In some sessions, yes, I have had to change quite a lot, but in some of them, you think, actually, with just a minor tweak, that's going to work brilliantly online. So, you know, let's not make too much hard work for ourselves, but we also need to look out for those times when that translation isn't going to be that clear cut. So, oh, just webinars, you do a lot of talking, don't you? So this reminds me of, I was listening to the radio, and I am going back a few years now, but a quote really stuck with me. There was an older actor, and I think it was Ian McShane, but I can't swear to it, which is why I can't find the actual quote. And he was talking about his latest movie that he'd made and giving it a plug, as they do. And the movie had a lot of CGI effects in it, and a lot was being done post-production, all on computers. And the DJ was saying, you know, it must have changed so much in your time, you know, the whole movie making business. And I can't remember his exact quote, but it was something along the lines of this: the movie making process hasn't changed. It's still about telling stories. The tools we use to do that have changed, but the principles and process remains the same. And I think that is critical when we're thinking about designing for virtual delivery. we mustn't forget all the good stuff that you already do. The principles and the process are exactly the same. It's just the tools that have changed. So phew, big relief all round. If you can design for face-to-face, you can probably design for virtual without it being too much of a stretch for you if you just follow the same good practice that you always did. So quickly, 3 things that I have learned, 3 big things. It's not 3 tiny things, 3 big things that I just want to share with you as I have been converting my Power Hour courses. Firstly, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear no matter how hard you try. So what I mean by that is the if the quality of your design is good in the first place, it's going to be a lot easier to convert because you're starting with a really great outline or session plan or whatever it is. If you are starting with 15 slides and a page of hand scribbled notes, it's going to take you longer to convert that face-to-face session to virtual delivery. So yeah, it just goes without saying really that the better your starting place, the easier it will be to convert. So I am getting distracted by all this. I'm going to look away from all the chat. 3 things. First thing is send things out in advance and make the participants responsible. I think we are perhaps a little bit guilty. Those of us who facilitate, we take on all the responsibility for the learning that happens in the room on the day. So yes, we may send out pre-course work, but I don't know about you, but I always assume that they haven't done it. And I compensate for that in the session. You can't do that so much virtually. And I think because we are under so much pressure to shorten the time, I mean, who's going to sit in a 1-day virtual training course? Not very many. And the clients and people I've been talking to, the trainers and the Training Designers Club, they are expected to at least half the amount of time. So if it's a half-day course, I mean, one of my VIPs, Kristen, she's taken a half-day course and turned it into a 2-hour session. So we are under pressure to lose time in the actual environment, and sending things out in advance can make that participant responsible, especially if we don't call it pre-course work, if we actually call it part 1 or something like that. So that's one of the things I've been doing with my Power Hour sessions. Just very, very quickly, in the chat has actually stopped. What sort of things do you think we could send out in advance? If you just want to pop that in the chat. Questionnaires, videos, reading, case studies, self-assessment quizzes, knowledge stuff, yes. Questionnaires, absolutely. TED Talks, objectives, activity packs, yeah. I'm so preaching to the converted here, aren't I? I might as well just go. Website links, assessments, yes. So there are 2 reasons why we need to be sending things out in advance. One is for the participant, so that they can do any prep that we need them to do. And one is for you, to make your life easier if you are facilitating. Because the thing that I learned very quickly when I started to convert my face-to-face courses for online is that it's so easy to give some handouts out in a face-to-face group, but it's really tricky if you want to do that online. So let's send them out in advance. Any handouts, so case studies, for example, is one that I would now send out in advance. I tell them that they are for the session. They don't need to do anything with them, just make sure they've got them. And then, like you say, some reading, some videos to watch, questionnaires they may need to complete can all be sent out up front. So that is my first big learning point, if you like, is that let's just have a big clear out and send out what we can in advance. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's a really good one, Adam. Set up instructions, so how to use Zoom. Definitely, that's something that I don't have to do because I'm rarely the one delivering it, but if you are delivering it, that is a really important point, so thank you for that. The second point is, kind of alluded to this already really, is stick to the knitting. Don't get distracted, don't get overwhelmed, it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole, I think, when we're thinking about designing for virtual training. So making sure that you have clear objectives and measurable outcomes. If you've got those, it makes the design of any session easier, not just a virtual one. I'm getting distracted by the chat again. Make sure that your information is super clear. One of the things we were talking about in the chat right at the start was what makes a great face-to-face session is the fact that we have all of that feedback from our delegates, all of that non-verbal feedback, and you can just tell, can't you? You can tell if something hasn't landed, and you can't necessarily do that when you're online. So making sure that everything that is presented is super clear becomes even more important when we are designing for digital delivery. Making sure we're following that logical structure and signposting that structure as well, so people can see where they are in the journey. Again, it just needs to be a little bit more obvious, I think, when we're online, because we haven't got that informal interaction going on. If you've got a small group, you probably will have that, and certainly most of the sessions I've run have been with very small groups, so we do have that. We can see each other's faces, and we can see what's going on, and we know each other well enough to put the hand up, but the logical structure of the signposting really helps. We need to still follow accelerated learning principles. I keep apologising for the fact that this is a webinar and therefore not following accelerated learning principles, but all those great things, following the master structure and things like that still apply, no matter how you are delivering a session. We still need to build in meaningful exercises that really enhance the learning experience. And here's a really big one. We need to build in reflection points, which is something that, that's probably the most recent thing I've learned, and that came from one of my VIP members who had run her very first virtual session and said, actually, we're a bit scared of building in reflection points when we're delivering virtually, because we think that people are going to start scrolling through Facebook or checking their emails or whatever it is, which they might, but it takes a lot of concentration, doesn't it, to engage with the screen the whole time, and people still do need to think about what you've just covered and what it means to them. So don't be afraid to build in reflection points. It's still good practice. We don't need to constantly be providing information. And of course, we still need that action planning. So if your virtual session has all of those things in it, you're onto a winner, frankly. Don't worry about anything else. It's a very good chance that it's going to work and it's going to be really successful. And the third thing, oh yes, I'll ask you a question before I get to my third thing, and I'll take a little sip of water. I often think about, because I usually design training for other people to deliver. When we read a book, we are connected directly with the author. The author is talking directly to us. When we watch a play or a film, we are relying on other people to bring that story to life for us. So my question to you is, what's the main difference, do you think, between a book and a stage play stroke stage or a screenplay? So just want to pop that in chat and I will just see what you think the difference is. People in the audience, interpretation, yeah. Listening, not reading. Book requires more imagination. That's an interesting one. Using your own staging, says Stephanie. Stage direction, says Reese. Reese, you win the prize, along with Stephanie there in a close second. Yeah, for me, when you're designing for virtual delivery, the stage directions are so very important. As I said, I design for other trainers usually, so they're even more important in my world, because I have to be able to explain to the facilitator what it is they are supposed to do. But even when you are designing for yourself, you have to put in that extra layer, because all of your great facilitation skills you've honed over a number of years, and they are instinctive. Chances are this is something that you started to do quite recently, and you're still in the conscious competence stage, and you will need a reminder. So these are my notes for this. Here's what I'm talking about, and down here I've got my stage directions, and it is just little things like remember to save the slide and clear before moving on. If you need to set things up in advance, if you want to set up a poll, for example, in advance, you need to know you can't be as agile when you are delivering virtually as you can when you are delivering face-to-face, because you have to have set things up in advance, or at least thought about how you're going to make them work from a technical perspective. So even if you are designing for yourself, write those stage directions down, and it will help you not get in a muddle. It will help you to keep that session flowing, and it will just help you to stay in control of where that session is going. So, oh, thank you, Joan, who likes my imagery. So I'm pleased to hear that's going down well with you. So, as I said, there's lots of little things that I've learned, but the three biggies for me over the 2 months I've been doing this is that. So make the learner responsible, stick to the knitting, and really think about those stage directions when you are designing your virtual session. And what I would say to you is don't panic. It's just training. And you can do this. You've got this. You've been doing it for years. It's exactly the same principles. We are just using a very slightly different way to deliver it. So get the basics right and you will be fine. The rest is just confidence with a new method. So I have hopefully given you something of use in there, which was my intention. But we have obviously just scratched the surface. And as I was putting this together, I realized there were so many other things I could talk about and so much more detail I could go into. So what I have decided to do is actually put together 4 proper interactive sessions, not like this. They're going to have more interaction in them, to help you to convert your face-to-face courses with confidence. And that starts next Monday. So I am going to be a very, very busy lady over the next couple of weeks. So this is going to follow, to move my chat out of the way. So we're going to be looking at these 4 sessions. We'll look at the planning of that session, the content of that session, because it may be slightly different to your face-to-face session, how to structure that for virtual delivery, and the methods that we're going to use. So just a little bit more detail behind that. As you can see, it's going to grow and it's going to build. So we're thinking about the purpose, the audience, the environment, and any prep. We are then thinking about how to edit our content, the timings, and how we're going to make delegates accountable. We're going to be looking at how to make sure that the structure, it flows online, because we do sometimes need to do things a little bit differently. And then we're going to be looking at bringing that learning to life when we are not in the same room as our delegates. And that's all going to be topped off with our regular lunch and learn on the 29th of May, where we are going to be looking at specific tools for online delivery. So in my mind, those 4 sessions will enable you to convert a face-to-face course to something that can be delivered virtually, and it will be a good session. It will work, it will be fine, it will really, land, and it will be effective. And then the lunch and learn on the 29th will allow you to add whistles and bells to that session if whistles and bells are what you like. So that's where I would recommend we're doing next. So just looking into all these things in a lot more detail. And I did think about doing it as a paid program, but it starts next week and I really can't be bothered doing sales pages and things like that. And setting everything up. So I did seriously think about making it as a standalone program for 129 quid, thereabouts, but obviously discounted for my VIPs. But what I have decided to do instead is to make it free. So it's going to be free to all VIP members of the Training Designers Club, because that's easiest for me. As I said, the sessions will be practical, and if you follow those sessions through, you will have converted a course by the end of those 4 sessions. I'm going to be running them Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week, and the following Tuesday, because the Monday is my hubby's birthday, so I'm not working them. So we've got quite a lot of work to do, but if you follow those sessions through, you will have something that will work. So if you want to take advantage of that, you can join the VIP membership by next Monday, and you will just be invited as a matter of course. And I mentioned her before, but Chris Thorne has already converted one of her sessions and she is already a VIP member. And honestly, I am so pleased with what she did, taking that half-day session into an online session. The way that she really focused on the content and the way that she rethought her activities so they would absolutely work in a virtual environment. And she's running that very soon. So all indications are that's going to be an absolute cracker of a session. So, so well done, Chris, for that. So just if you're wondering, well, you know, it's 4 sessions, so what? Just very quickly, what else you get for your membership is you get designer drop-ins, which are virtual get-togethers every single week, where we just have a chat about what we're working on, and we share ideas with each other, and we overcome each other's problems, and it's a peer-to-peer coaching session really, and they are incredibly popular and very valuable. So we get inspiration and support from peers. Not everybody is new to training design. There's a real mix in that group. We've got coaches, we've got employed people, we've got self-employed people, people who do a lot of learning design, people who do a bit. So it's a really varied group, and having that other perspective can be very, very useful. There's also a resource library, so quite often people just need an exercise or a handout or an idea or a video or a how-to guide, and that's all on tap as well for VIP members. The lunch and learn sessions, which we do monthly, which are more structured than the designer drop-ins, they are included free as part of membership. So they are always really useful to attend, but that is something that you can come along as a pay-as-you-go guest if you really want to. I post weekly top tips on there for training design. Should you wish to complete formal training or buy Empower Hour materials, there's a discount on that as well for VIP members. So, you know, people are getting their money's worth, I have to say. Plus, you've got that personal learning network at your disposal. So quite a lot, and like any community, the more you get involved, the more value you're going to get from it. So that's just how communities work. So just to quickly let you know, James has been with me for quite a while. I've somehow maximised the chat. And he didn't know what he was going to get, but I know for a fact, I mean, James is an incredibly experienced training designer. I learn from him, he's brilliant. But like all of us, he gets stumbling blocks, he gets little, I need something that will. And he finds just going through the resources or popping into the group will just give him that spark of inspiration that he needs and help him to overcome any difficulties that he's working on. And Eleanor, who isn't joining us live today, but I know that she's going to be getting the catch up. She turns up regularly to our meetings. She is so supportive and so generous, as the VIPs are. It amazes me how much they support each other and how they share resources and how they will set up one-to-ones just to help each other out. So it really is, I'm getting so much value from it. So, and thank you to all of the VIPs for contributing and to making it a success. So as I mentioned before, I didn't mention before actually, but time is of the essence. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take any questions that you've got about VIP membership or those 4 virtual sessions. You can put them in the chat, but I won't necessarily get around to them today. If I've got time at the end, I've only got 5 more minutes, I will. But if you post them in the free Training Designers Club Facebook group or send me an email, I will answer all your questions tomorrow. Just about those couple of things. So what is it that you're going to get in those 4 sessions, and what is VIP membership all about? And I will happily answer them if I can. I will quickly check the chat just before we close. So do remember to become a VIP member of the Training Designers Club to take advantage of those 4 free sessions that start on Monday. And you can join at trainingdesignersclub.co.uk, become a member. So let me just bring up the chat and just see if there's anything there that I could answer very, very quickly. No, I haven't got any questions. I guess the questions are going to come in the Facebook group, which is brilliant because then everyone can see the answers too. So if that is all for now, thank you so much for bearing with me. I'm delighted with myself for sticking to time, always a great sign. And I would just very much like to say thank you, and I hope to see you in the VIP section very, very soon. And good luck with all of your virtual and face-to-face training when that is reinstated. If there can be any more help, join the VIP group and I'll be delighted to help you there. So thank you very much for that. I am now going to stop sharing the screen and say goodbye to you all. Thank you for that. Nice to see so many people still here. Really appreciate it. Catch you all later. Take care. Bye.